maybe more than anyone I can think of, Abbas Kiarostami really represented the fact that ideas and human expression are so much stronger than authority, than money, than guns, than prisons. And although it's so tragic to lose him, when we see what he gave us, it is
So it's Abbas Kiarostami, Iranian filmmaker, and this is a small love letter from me for this Sufi master in cinema. So apart from cinema, Abbas wrote some beautiful poems. He was a photographer. He was a painter. In cinema world, he was like one of world cinema's most vital, sophisticated, and mysterious voices. Abbas was born in 1940 in Tehran. He studied painting and then he worked as a graphic designer for some time. He made some promotional videos also in this time for TV. It was in 1969 when he started working at Kanun in Tehran, where he made films with children for educational purpose. His first short film was made under Kanun, which was Bread Ali in 1970. It was in 1978-79 major event happened in Iran's history, that is Iranian Revolution. It was in 1987 Abbas got international recognition for his films, mainly Coco trilogy. In 1997 he won the best film award at Cannes, that is Palme d'Or, for his film Test of Cherry. Post 2000 he mainly used digital medium for making films. He made two films outside Iran after 2010. In 2016 he died in Paris when he was under treatment there for cancer. So a little bit about the censorship in Iran and the revolution happened in 1979. In 2019, Iran ranked at 170 out of 180 countries in the World Press Freedom Index. India is at 140 in this list. So we can imagine how the situation is there in the Iran and how people are struggling with the freedom of expression there. Mohammad Reza Shah was the last monarch of the House of Pahlavi. He was a modernizer and he supported the modern economy, middle class, and women's rights also. He strongly supported the Western culture. The religious group used to call him American puppet. But he ruthlessly suppressed the dissent and jailing, torturing the political opponents. He used to run secret police called Savak in that period. In the period of 1970s, there were enormous profits from the oil production, and the gap between the wealthy and the poor, it was widened in that period. And these wealthy people were mostly his relatives. Also in 1975 recession happened and slowly the unemployment was also increasing. And in 1977 when Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of religious group, his son died, and then protest started, and many students were killed in this protest. And after that continuously various protests started. Military attack also happened on the protest with the tanks, with the helicopters, and Rex cinema incident happened where 400 people were killed. So finally in 1979 the Shah was overthrown, and Ayatollah Khomeini was the main leader in opposition. In April 1979, following overwhelming support in a national referendum, Khomeini declared Iran as a Islamic republic. The left-wing nationalists and intellectual people were the allies at the time of revolution. They excluded these people from any positions of power in new regime, and they returned to the conservative social values, which was the opposite what Khomeini used to say before the revolution. So after this, public presence of women and expression of romantic love became highly restricted. The Family Protection Act was declared void. The new government took away the equipment, film stock, and all the resources from the filmmaker in order to control the filmic representation of Iranian society. So the for every film, for the synopsis, screenplay, cast or crew, for everything, the filmmakers need to take the approval from the censorship board, and in order to exhibit the film in Iran. Otherwise, they could not make any film. This year, Iranian filmmaker Mohammad Rasulov won Golden Bear at Berlin for his film There Is No Evil, but he could not travel to the festival to receive the award because he's banned from making films, and also he can't travel outside Iran. His previous films also won major awards at Cannes Film Festival. He tried to spoke against the government through his films with the themes like capital punishment or battling corporate operation or the chain murders happened in Iran in 1980s and 90s. Also for personal freedom, and the government banned this filmmaker, telling like he's making propaganda films against the system. One more major filmmaker from Iran, Zafar Panahi, who was a former assistant director of Abbas Kiarostami. In 2010, he is banned from making films. He can't travel outside Iran from that time. He was under house arrest also. Still, he's making films inside his home, inside taxi. After that, and he's the main character in all his films after that period. And he's telling the stories through these films about the hardships he's going through. So before 2010, mainly he was speaking about women's condition or women's issues in Iran, and the system thought like he's making propaganda films, and they banned his films. Mohsin Makhmalov is a major filmmaker in world cinema. His daughter Samira also. All the members in his family are like filmmakers, and since 2009, this entire family is banned in Iran, making films or publishing books. And from that period, like from last 15 years, they are living in Paris, outside their country. And after 2008, Samira has not made any film, and whatever Mohsin is making after that, it is not that magical when he was in Iran. His films, all his films in Iran, are like very very beautiful films about the people in Iran. This entire family won, I think, more than 100 awards at major international film festivals. But they have to live outside Iran after 2005 because of the laws, censorship, and the government in Iran. So if we compare these banned filmmakers with Abbas Kiarostami or filmmakers like Majid Majidi or Asghar Farhadi, whose film structure is more dramatic and whose films are not direct critics of the government. Some intellectuals criticize Abbas for not taking any clear position on political issues, but they don't seem to consider Kiarostami's particular style and philosophical thoughts as a clear expression of his political concerns. Actually, his films are deeply political. Also, he's often compared with Tarkovsky or Robert Bresson or filmmakers from Italian neorealism. But I feel Kiarostami is totally different from all these filmmakers. With all the restrictions in his country, he has developed a unique style of his own, which is more close to poetry and which is truly spiritual. Abbas was a self-made filmmaker, and he mostly worked with non-professional actors or children. So naturally, his films carry that innocence in his films and that freshness. He never tried to make anything complicated. He gave much importance to the off-screen space and the way he used the sound also. The god's eye view of a car traveling and people's talking inside the car, or many times the character are not shown, but we can feel their out of frame presence. He constantly experimented with the medium and made new discoveries through his films. His films completely blur the lines between reality and fiction, documentary and drama. Kurosami's career is the clash between documentary and dramatic elements, between the observed and the imposed, between the discovered and the determined, and between the closed world of movie shoot and the total one behind the camera. Kirachame believed that the mise-en-scene should go almost unnoticed and fade away in the interest of entirety of the film. Choosing real locations instead of creating sets allowed Kirachame to avoid prominent mise-en-scene and present realistic images of ordinary people's life. About the endings in his films, he used to say that I don't leave the blank spaces just so people have something to finish. I leave them blank so people can fill them according to how they think and what they want. In my mind, the abstraction we accept in other forms of art like painting, sculpture, music, poetry can also enter the cinema. I feel cinema is the seventh art, and supposedly it should be the most complete since it combines the other arts. Kirosami was a symbolist and perhaps the most original symbolist of all because he was also one of the great cinematic naturalists. His films are marked by two main figures of style extended views of people traveling and working in alluring landscapes and streets, and extended views of people talking in cars. So Abbas started his filmmaking career at Kanun, that is the Institute for the Intellectual Development of Children and Young Adults. So his first short film, which he made in 1970, it's about a young boy who is returning back to his home with the bread, and on the way, an arrogant dog is sitting, and the encounter between them. For the end sequence of this short film, Abbas waited for 40 days as he wanted the dog and the boy in the single shot. His film The Traveler is about a 12-year boy who wanted to attend an important football game at Tehran, which is around 150 miles away from his place. And for that, how he manipulates the people around him and his family in the process. But when he reaches there, he finds out that the match is going to start after 3 hours. So to pass the time, he lies down outside the stadium for a brief nap. And when he wakes up, the stadium is completely empty and the game is already over. So in 21 years at Kanun, Abbas made around 16 shots and 4 feature film, mostly with the children. And it was working with the children that he also developed a habit of making films where the actors are non-professional actors. A very simple plot of this film where a young boy travels from Kokar to nearby village to return a school book of his friends. The title of this film, Where is the Friend Song? It was taken from a poem written by Sohrab Safiri, who is an Iranian poet famed for his love of village life and who was a great influence on Kiarostami. On paper, the story is straightforward, but the film it's like a bridge between the children and adults, and it talks about the moral duties we owe to each other and in the society. So this region was devastated in 1990s earthquake. So in this film, Life and Nothing More, Kiarostami dramatized his trip to Kokar after the disaster to inquire about the previous movie's young star, uh, with an actor who is playing the director now. And one of the film's key incident is the encounter with a newlywed man who is married to his fiancée the day after the earthquake, and they spend their first night together in the shelter of ruins. So in the last part of the trilogy in the film Through the Olive Trees, now this story is based on the newlywed groom, which was seen in the earlier film Life and Nothing More. Now the director in the in that film is a character in this film, in this last film of trilogy, and he gets involved in the couple's relationship. So the new actor now in this movie is a director who is making a film on that newlywed couple. And the director from earlier film is a character in this film. So it's like a again film and film, which is Kiarostami's usual style. So all these three works are like sustained meditations on a singular landscape and the way ordinary people live in them. It's about the concentrated inquiries that raise more questions than they answer, and comic as well as cosmic poems about dealing with personal and impersonal disaster. They're about making discoveries and cherishing what is in the world, including things that we can't understand. So each film documents the one before and in turn becomes the fictional motive for the next one. So in this extraordinary series of events, each film overrides its predecessor. Kirosami constantly moves between the two poles of fiction and documentary, and there is no clear distinction between the two registers, but rather a complex system of permutations. Close Up is perhaps Kirosami's crowning achievement when it comes to blending fact with the fiction. It is based on a true story of a man called Sabzian, who is impersonated a famous Iranian director Mohsin Makhmalbaf, and then wormed his way into a film-loving family's confidence. He was arrested and put on a trial for fraud. Abbas was working on some other projects when he read this news in one magazine, and then he stopped making that another film, and then he decided to go with this. Like he thought that he should make a documentary on Sabzian. Film, uh, Film starts with the journalist who is traveling with the police to the house to the family who complained about this guy Sabzian. So this entire scene is restaged, and these people are traveling to arrest Sabzian. And these men finish talking about the case, but continue to converse, discussing their hometowns, their careers, and so on. And soon realizing that they're lost, they stop a couple of times in between and to ask for directions, and everything plays out in a real time. And then having arrived at family's house, Kirosami significantly keeps his eye on the driver only, and the journalist is inside the house to talk to the family about the arrest. And we see the driver who is uh, outside, waiting outside, and who is turning the car around, picking up the flowers or kicking up a can, which looks like a very unimportant event. But Kirosami focused on that instead of the actual arrest or the family who complained. We see Kirosami inside the prison talking to Sabjian about this incident, and Kirosami took the permission from the court also when the trial is going on. And all the actors who acted in this film are like actual people who are involved in this case. Sabjian is played by the actual Sabjian and the family who complained about him. So the entire thing is restaged then after taking the permission. The visit of journalist, also the meeting of Sabjian with the family member, and then the arrest of Sabjian inside the house. Everything was then after that restaged uh, as the Kirosami wants. So in the final scenes, we see the actual Mohsin Makhmalov meeting Sabzian outside the prison, and then both are traveling to the family's house to meet them with the flowers. And the last frame is one of the best freeze frame in the cinema, I think, after 400 blows. So at last, we ask ourselves that what is this? A documentary, docudrama based on a true story, or an attempt to take a true story and then improve upon it? In some ways, it's like all the three at once. And what's fun about it is the way that its own conception, that like restage history as a documentary, parallels the film's central theme of how impossible it can be to know the truth, the actual truth of any other human being, even if they are telling you who they are. Like Sabjian is playing himself. Like he earlier he played a role of a director with the family, and now in this film He's telling us all what he has gone through. So is he playing a part of director, or is he playing the part of actor actually, or he's just acting for this film what Kirosami has made? Also the connection between Sabzian and Makhmalbaf, and how Makhmalbaf cinema impacted Sabzian's life personally, and like why he decided to play that part of Makhmalbaf. Also the use of different camera setups for this film, like the courtroom scenes, we'll see they are they will look different, and the other restage scenes they will look different, as if the audience of audience will feel like we're actually watching the uh, actual trial inside the court. But it is planned like that, like the people will think that it's a actual trial happening in the courtroom, and the other scenes are like happening actually outside, but everything is like pre-planned. So also about the social economical condition about the Iranian youth, when we get to know that Sabzian is unemployed in that period. Also the family members, young family members who are engineers, who are just passed out from the college and still they are not getting any jobs, and we get some kind of feeling between them in that. So this film is a brilliant explanation of the nature of cinematic truth and illusion, like what is truth and what is not. Also the use of sound at the end and the freeze frame when actual Makhmalov and Sabzian are traveling on the bike, and the use of sound in that scene. So in 1997, Kiarostami won Palme d'Or award for his film Test of Cherry at Cannes, and it's the only Iranian film till date to win that top prize at Cannes. Mr. Badi, a middle-aged man, drives through Tehran looking for someone to do a job for him, and he offers a large amount of money in return. He reveals that he plans to kill himself and has already dug the grave outside the town. He needs someone to throw the earth on his body after his death. So his first recruit, a young, shy Kurdish soldier, refuses to do this job and flees away from Abadi's car. The Afghan seminarist also declines because of religious objections to suicide. The third one is Azeri taxidermist, and who is willing to help Badi because he needs the money for his sick child, but tries to talk him about it. And he reveals that once, when he was young, he also wanted to commit suicide, but chose to live when he tested mulberries. Still, he promises to throw the earth on Badi if he finds him dead in the morning. That night, Badi lies in the grave while a thunderstorm begins. And after a long blackout, the film ends by breaking the fourth wall with camcorder footage of Kiarostami and the film crew filming Test of Cherry. So again, Abbas combining that fiction non-fiction thing with this film, and we get to know at the last that the crew is shooting a film called Test of Cherry, and whatever we have seen till now is a lie. The entire film happens inside the car with some outside car shots. With the different characters coming and sitting inside the car, he gave reference to the other countries, as someone is Afghani, someone is Turkish, or someone is Kurdish, indirectly commenting on the geopolitical situation over there. We never know that why Mr. Badi wants to commit suicide. The film talks about depression. It deals with the theme like the meaning of life and death. Inside the car, we never see two characters sitting together. Always close up shots of one character or another character. For most of the part, while shooting, Kiarostami used to sit besides the character while he's talking, and Kiarostami used to sit with the camera with that character. So when the end comes, it surprises us and forces us to ask again and again that what is real and what is fiction. So post 2000, Abbas Kiarostami mainly used digital medium to make films. He felt that 35mm camera would limit the filmmaker and the people, whereas the video camera displayed the truth from every angle and not a forged truth. So for him, this camera was a discovery, Like a god, it was all encompassing and omnipresent. The camera could turn 360 degrees and thus reported the truth, an absolute truth. So in 2001, Abbas was uh, called by UN to make a documentary in Uganda about the orphans, millions of orphans who are living in there in extreme poverty, and the country is devastated by AIDS and civil war. So Abbas and his colleague went there to just see how the situation is there and to plan their documentary with two digital cameras. So when they came back after living there for 8 or 10 days, and Abbas edited that uh, footage, and the documentary is made from that only. So they never went back to shoot the documentary. After that, Abbas made a film called 10. The entire film was shot in the car only, and the woman who engages in conversation with the various passengers when she's driving around Tehran. And uh, this was portrayed by actress Mani Akbari, who is essentially playing herself alongside her real life son. And the woman embodies the complicated overlap between the politicized and the personal, as well as the ambiguity between fiction and real life that Kurosawa loves to inject into his work. Through the myopic view of dashcam, Kurosawa manages to widen the scope to reveal what a politically charged Iran looked like post 9/11. 10 was notable for Kurosami's unusual method of filmmaking, abandoning many scriptwriting conventions and reinventing his formal style, focusing on the socio-political landscapes of Iran as seen through the eyes of one woman as she drives through the streets of Tehran. Kurosami's new direction towards a digital micro-budget filmmaking practice used digital cameras to virtually eliminate the uh, director. So the director is absent actually. The films in the films like this. Abbas had very high regards for Japanese filmmaker Ozu. So in 2003, he made a film called Five, which was dedicated to Ozu. And the film consists of 5 long shots, around 15-16 minutes each, just putting the camera nearby the sea, just observing whatever happening in front of the camera. In 2008, Abbas made a film called Shirin, where we only see close-ups of more than 100 female actors from Iran and French actress Juliette Binoche, and they're watching a film on the screen, a Persian tale, romance tale of Khusro and Shirin. And this was a compelling exploration of the relationship between image, sound, and female spectatorship. But basically, what happened while shooting the film, each actor was filmed individually in Kirosami's living room, and there was nothing on the screen. The director asked them to just cast their gaze at some series of dots above the camera. That's it. And no one was aware about what is happening. And finally, he put everything in this and made a film uh, with the name of Shirin. So throughout these years, Abbas was making all his films in Iran when many filmmakers were banned in Iran, or many filmmakers left the country and living outside to make films. But in 2010, he decided to go outside Iran and make films in other countries. It was like a voluntary exile because of the Iranian conditions, because of the Iranian censorship and production conditions. So in 2010, Abbas made a film called Certified Copy, predominantly a French production, where French actress Juliette Binoche and British singer William Schimmel uh, played the major roles. So William Schimmel is a writer in this film who is publishing his book called Certified Copy, and they meet there and spend the day together, seemingly drawn to one another. But as the film goes on, it becomes less and less clear whether they have just met or indeed have been married for years and are acting out a scenario intended to shake up their marriage. On the surface, the film seems to be a simple story of couple, but as with all Kurosami movies, it slowly reveals itself to be about the separation between the truth and the fiction, and whether it even matters which is which. Like it's original or it's a its copy, and the film's name suggests the theme of the film, that is certified copy. For this film, Binoche won Best Actress Award at Cannes, and that year Jafar Panahi was the jury member at Cannes, but he was banned from making films or going outside Iran at that time. And Binoche pointed out this on the stage while receiving the award. In 2012, Abbas made a film called Like Someone in Love in Japan. It was about a beautiful young Japanese escort booked by a elderly academic. It was about her past, about her relationship with her boyfriend, and various things. It was a daring new direction in Abbas cinema. It was an intriguing movie poised and self-possessed but strangely unfinished, as if we are invited to imagine how such a situation might end. So, for both these movies, Abbas, the basic intention was that he's making a film outside Iran, but his only concern was that no one should say these movies are made by someone outside the country. And I think these both the movies have stood on that. When Abbas was undergoing his cancer treatment, he was working on his last film called 24 Frames. His son finished that movie after his death, and it was released in 2017. So basically, in this film, uh, he started with famous paintings and then switched to his photos, which he took throughout those years. And he included about 4.5 minutes of what he imagined might have happened before or after each image when he captured those images. So it was truly a meditation in cinema. He used green screen and VFX in this movie, and so this was the last movie made by Abbas and released worldwide. Abbas used to say that photography is the mother of cinema, and the history of his photography goes back to the time of Iranian Revolution, when his profession was at standstill and he was almost outlawed. So he once said that he had no choice but to buy a camera and then do photography. So like that he started capturing photographs. So these are some photos taken by Abbas. In the total darkness, poetry is still there, and it is there for you. More than the other forms of literature like novel or anything else, Abbas was more interested in poetry. In 2006 to 2011, Abbas released the works of these four masters: Nima, Hafiz, Sadi, and Rumi. And these works were called like Water, Void, Tears, and Fire. So mainly his work is mostly inspired by poetry rather than other forms of literature or cinema. So these are some selected poems written by Abbas. The one poem is like this: I recorded a masterpiece in my diary in the middle of the night. When morning came, it was no more than gibberish.
بستگی داره به امکاناتی که برای ما فراهمه. یه موقع است که شرایط ساختن یه فیلم فراهمه، یه ایده است که قابلیت فیلم شدن داره، شرایط مناسبی برای ساخت از تهیه کننده نزدیکی بهم وجود داره، اون موقع خوب فیلم سازم. اما معمولا بین این فیلم ها 2 سال فاصله میفته. تو اون دوره عکاسی میکنم وقتی نور هست، وقتی سوژه مناسبی جلوی دوربینم هست، و گاهی شعر میگم وقتی که هیچی نیست، نه نور هست نه امکانات ساخت چیزی هست. یه ایده به ذهنم میاد و موقع است که فکر میکنم شعر میگم. بنابراین همین کارا رو میکنم، نجاری میکنم، نقاشی میکنم، شعر میگم، عکاسی میکنم، فیلم میسازم، اما هیچ کدوم اینا حرفه های جدی من نیست.
So some final words on Abbas and his cinema. So he used to say that he's not a full-time filmmaker, or filmmaking is not a serious profession for him. Cinema, life, or any other art form is about that rhythm, and his films carry that rhythm so perfectly that you feel that completeness inside you. Abbas used to say that poetry always runs away from you, and it's very difficult to grasp it. So he felt that the cinema that will last longer is the poetic cinema and not the cinema that is just storytelling. Abbas always thought that cinema needs that deep understanding of the life and your environment, and he expresses himself throughout his life without any complex technical stuff. Kirosami's cinema is truly compassionate about the people in it, and at the same time, it is detached from that. So it's a rare quality which Abbas achieves in his work. Indian filmmaker Anand Gandhi once said that if Buddha is present today, then he will make films, and I strongly feel that Abbas did that. Throughout his career, he constantly reminded us that cinema is a lie, and he followed and experimented the structure to show us this. For him, through these lies only, one can come close to the truth. Some tips or Kirosami's comment on cinema. The most important part of directing is choosing the character and the person who will play that, and after that, just following them. Anybody who works on a film, their work should be seamless. The craft of cinema should go unnoticed. When you create general excitement amongst your viewers, something has gone wrong with the film. Off screen sound reminds us of these other dimensions that we may not be able to bring up on the screen. Off screen sound is to witness to the fact that when we close our eyes, the world still goes on. Abbas used to say that the unimportant scenes or shots that give his film such a rich texture and contribute to such a thoroughly realized world. So he used to take those unimportant shots very seriously.
به ادبیات زیاد ادبیات رو باور نکنین که میتونه خیلی کمکتون بکنه. بیشتر شاهد چیزایی باشین که اطرافتون میگذره و به جای اینکه از ادبیات به سینما بیارین یا از سینما به سینما بیارین، از محیطتون و از تجربه هاتون استفاده کنین و اونها رو به فیلم برگردونین.